Welcome to the Rebecca Panapinto Project. Today I'm excited to host a very dear friend named Gyre Renwick. Now, Gyre was an early employee of Google where he spent more than a decade as the head of industry for their healthcare practice, supporting the growth of the tech giant's healthcare department, all while enabling the healthcare organizations that he served to use Google's full suite of products. Gyre was also responsible for creating and launching the Google Grants program, which was there to help nonprofits grow by leveraging technology. It later became Google.org. After leaving Google, Gyre went to work for Lyft, where he built the healthcare business there from the ground up. Their biggest focus was addressing the gap in transportation for some of our most vulnerable populations in the United States. This then led to Gyre guiding the overall Lyft business function. Gyre and his team spearheaded a program that helped to provide non-emergency medical transportation to low-income and elderly patients who do not have access to quality transportation. They were able to expand this offering to all healthcare patients, even enabling those with Medicare, Medicaid, and commercial insurance plans to leverage the platform. Now, Gyre serves as the Chief Operating Officer for an incredible company called Modern Health. They are helping employers to support the mental health of each of their individual employees and making a huge impact in the world. We talk a lot about this today, and you'll also love Gyre's take on impactful leadership. Enjoy the show. Hello, Gyre, and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me here. It's good to see you.
So excited. We've been friends, for a long time now. I think I've seen you probably more in person in different states than anybody else. Like, I don't think I ever saw you in your home state, or maybe you saw me in mine once, but it's like every major healthcare conference is like, oh, there's Gyre.
Yeah, the conference circuit. I think that's where we met up quite a few times.
Yeah, I love it. It's so fun. And I've been a huge fan of yours throughout it all. And so I'm so excited to have you on the show today and hear about what you're doing.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me here. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So Modern Health, such a cool company. And I just love your progression through healthcare in general. Google, Lyft, now what you're doing. But tell us from the Modern Health perspective, what is the impact you guys are making on digital transformation within the greater healthcare ecosystem?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking me that too. And yeah, I've been here at Modern Health now for 7 months, so it's
Okay.
relatively new in traditional company years. And Modern Health years, it feels like I've been here a lot longer than that. So we're a fast-paced growing company right now. And what I love about Modern Health is I really do think we're having just an amazing impact in the world today. And that personally, just throughout my career, whether it was at Google or at Lyft or here, just centered back into mission and purpose is frankly what gets me excited and motivated to do the job that I do as well. You asked about healthcare. I mean, my whole career has been in healthcare, and why I love healthcare is I feel like there's some amazing problems to solve, and if you can do it, you fundamentally just make amazing impact on people's lives. And I go back to my time at Google or at Lyft or here at Modern Health. It's just you can feel really positive about the impact you're making. So that first of all makes me excited. What I love about what we're doing in Modern Health is we're really trying to address the needs of our mental health. And to me, it's such an important issue that I feel like as a society and as a healthcare system, we've just failed to have adequate solutions to meet this need. And I've gone through the process myself for my family, for my loved ones, to be able to find mental health services. And I'd say the market today is incredibly fragmented, and it's frankly broken. It's unfortunately, it's a population's a need that we haven't really addressed today. And so what I'm excited about is the work we're doing in Modern Health is we're fundamentally changing the way that people not only get access to mental health, but even how they think about mental health, and really trying to remove some of the stigma, remove some of those barriers, and hopefully bring better technology to an area that hopefully helps get people the help that they need.
Very cool. I think stigma is a big barrier of entry for anybody. So the fact that you're bringing awareness and by having the digital element, you can let people be comfortable from their home as they are taking care of their mental health. But I will say you solve big problems, guy. You're like, what is the hardest healthcare problem to solve? That's the one I want to go for with Google, Lyft, and even now with Modern Health. So around mental health, beyond just removing the stigma, what do you think the biggest challenge that you guys are chipping away at with Modern Health is right now?
Yeah, I think first of all, our philosophy is that everyone suffers with some type of mental health problem. So I think if you think about mental health, we always talk about in this color spectrum, and we think about people's gradient of mental health ranges from green to yellow to red. And the way society breaks down, it's a bell curve. So around 20% of the population fits within the green, the less acuity, about 60% in the yellow, needing some type of intervention or help, and then 20% in the red, or really needing clinical intervention. And similar to, I think, everyone's health is that mental health, everyone falls on that spectrum. And I think what's important for us here is that not only are we helping get people to the right care that they need, but helping reach them at the time they're actually willing to get that care. And so when you come to Modern Health, we're doing a few things. We're triaging you to the appropriate level of care. And so we do intakes and assessments and say, clinically, your current mental health puts you in the need of seeing a therapist. And so you're in that red bucket there. What's interesting though, is when you also, the population that comes to us, some people aren't really ready to see a therapist. We see at times over 50% of people that come to Modern Health say, I don't want to have one-on-one care. I only want to interact with your digital experience or any type of structured coaching or other types of non-one-on-one care you can offer. And so what's interesting is you're trying to actually appeal to where are people's preferences, what type of care do they want to have, additionally, what type of care do they need to have, and actually helping navigate them through that journey. And what's really interesting is you have someone that comes in that maybe is appropriate for therapy, but there is still a stigma or there's not a willingness to get that type of help today. If you can bring them through a digital experience and help kind of step their care up, eventually maybe you can get them to see a therapist because that is appropriate for them as well. And then the other inverse of that, you also have people that come to Modern Health and say, I've always seen a therapist, I want to see a therapist, and maybe that's not the appropriate level of care for them. And two things with that is one, unfortunately, there's not enough therapists in the world to actually address the mental needs of everyone. And so if you just allow everyone to get therapy, you push everyone to therapy, it's actually not good for the whole ecosystem. And that's what creates this kind of backlog of maybe those that need the care can't have it. And two, from a societal issue, that means that people that maybe want to get care can't get the experience that they want, and they can't get connected to a therapist. And so I think what's interesting about Modern Health is we're not only thinking about holistically the network of providers out there and how do you efficiently disperse that, but then two, how do you actually bring people in when they're ready for a certain type of care and either step them up or step them down based on where they are within that spectrum.
Very cool. How much, say you're a red person, although I'm sure nobody wants to voluntarily be a red person, and you need to engage with the therapist. Once that starts happening, how much is it about the person they're talking to, the personality, and like a cultural match between these two individuals for ultimately success of that benefit?
Yeah. And one thing I'll say is to your point there, it's we all fall within that spectrum. We actually move up and down. So at times in my life, I've probably been in the red population and then I moved back to the yellow and to the green. And so, I mean, obviously the last 2+ years of the way the world's operating, there's been more disruption to folks' mental health and we've probably seen them quite a bit of time. And so in some ways, like that's a spectrum we all move up and down. So just to be clear, I think that throughout all our lives, everyone moves and fluctuates. And whether it's relationship changes, career changes, or just life events, that pushes up and down that spectrum. I think what's interesting is when you come to Modern Health, we do a lot to actually invest in actually building a really strong network of providers. And when we think about a provider, when you come to Modern Health, we want to match you to someone that reaches the preferences you want, whether that's age, demographic, specialization, location. Our care, even pre-pandemic, over 50% of our visits were actually done in person. So we actually are having a network of providers that actually can see people face to face. Obviously, during times of COVID, that's shifted almost exclusively online, but we have actually a physical network of providers that can do virtual or in-person visits. What's also really interesting too is the network we have. We try to actually manage to what we call time to care. Meaning when you come to Modern Health, we want to connect you to a provider in less than 24 hours. Meaning that you actually have a first available session with a provider, which is incredibly hard to do. Like if you look at traditional EAPs or traditional carriers, most times people measure that in weeks or in months. We want to actually make that connection incredibly fast because we know if you need the help you need, you're trying to get connected to someone, we want to make that experience as fast as possible. But we also want to connect you to someone that really focuses on what's important to you. So if you have OCD, you want to see a provider that specializes in OCD. If you suffer from eating disorders, you want to be matched to another provider that specializes in that. And what we found is that actually helping give people the preferences. So allowing people not only time to care, but also managing to what's your preferences? Who do you want to see? How do you want that care received? And then match people to match that specialization becomes an incredibly powerful tool, not only for members, because as a member, I want to see someone that focuses on what I care about, but even as a provider, providers ultimately want to treat people that have the same focus and same specialization that they have probably spent years of their career working towards to be able to. And so we find that ability to actually match that and that personal connection becomes incredibly powerful. And then on top of that, you think about it, it's actually probably similar to my time at Lyft as well. When you think about every time you get out of Lyft, you can rate that driver. We take that same quality and frankly rigor of our network back to our providers, where if you finish with a provider and you have a great session, we can capture that rating and we can actually obviously know that. If you don't, we can actually interject and actually step in with that provider and take action on that as well too. And to me, that's a really strong piece of our network. And the quality and speed is something that, and personalization, I think are all three areas that really distinguish us and ultimately help create such a better experience really for both sides of them.
That's very cool. I would say for me too, on a personal note, not so much with therapy, but like personal trainers, as executive coaches, like these people, my intrigue in meeting with them next or staying with them long term had so much to do with how well we were matched.
Yeah.
And I don't know that an algorithm solves it all the time, but the more you can build those and learn from those, the better hit rate you ultimately will get. And then you'll see these folks engaged longer and more because like it's somebody they feel comfortable with and they want to learn from. And I couldn't see training with anybody else other than Lee, who I work out with at this point. Like
Yeah.
he's my guy. He gets it. He knows what to do. He knows how to guide me. He knows where I'm weak, where I'm strong, and how to encourage me.
Yeah. And I think that is a really personal relationship that becomes incredibly powerful. And to your point, it's not going to always be the best match as well. And that's the nice thing is like you can come to Modern Health, you can get matched to a coach or a therapist or any type of one-on-one care. If it isn't the right fit as well, too, we can move on and we can help rematch you. And we do that through algorithms. We also do that through people and actually have almost like care navigators that can help you manage the experience as well. And so it really is a personal relationship that we help create a match. And I think make sure that's the right fit for that, for what that individual is looking for.
Very cool. We looked at this for the most part from a perspective, I think, of somebody who has identified that their mental health state needs to be addressed and they need help. But what about within the industry, providers, and maybe even your customers? How are you seeing them be impacted by the business that you're able to leverage and what you're able to bring to the table as Modern Health?
Yeah, so our model today is we work directly through employers, and so when we contract directly with employers, when we launch to employers, what I love about our experience is we drive really high engagement. So when we launch to an organization, on average, we see about 30% engagement across an employee base, which is really, really high. I mean, relative to traditional benefits, usually that's in the order of 1 to 3%. And so the actual adoption of actual benefits is really high. And the reason for that is we've created an experience that is a very consumer-driven content experience. So when you come, you're downloading the app, you're actually digesting digital content, you're taking assessments, but it really becomes an engaging product that people actually utilize. And then from there, we actually can actually route you to level of care. But in some ways, like over the past 2 years, especially, the number of employees that are getting pressure from or employers are getting pressure from their employees to have a solution like ours is really driving the conversation. That's why you're seeing adoption really high. That's why you're seeing engagement really high. And I will say across the Fortune 500 today, I mean, every single one of those companies are talking to us or our competitors about a solution like ours. And to me, that's what's exciting is like, we're really addressing an acute need of populations today. And you have an employee base that is more actively engaged and aware and wanting to have a conversation about mental health than you've ever seen before too. And that's in some ways it's a great combination and it just creates an opportunity for us to hopefully go out and work with these employers and actually hopefully make a really important difference across our employee base. The other thing I'll say that too is we do a lot to actually support our employers. So not only are we providing solutions to our members, but we also take information across large employee bases and say, how do you actually understand the well-being of your populations? How can we actually provide insights and almost analytics across people's mental health to the employers we work with? And that becomes a really powerful tool as an employer to actually understand, what pockets of my team, is it team, department, or location specific? Obviously, we don't give individual personal information, but on aggregate, you can really help employers understand their population and ultimately take action on that and help actually provide additional services. And what I love about Modern Health is we do a lot in terms of one-on-one care, but we also do group sessions. We do more structured coaching for new managers, other populations as well. And we actually try to help support our employers and build technology for them as well.
I'm sure it makes massive changes and just really helps an employer from this like great resignation, keeping people happy perspective. A thing that comes to mind I'm curious about is how do you protect confidentiality?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
how do you
yeah.
get people comfortable with, hey, I'm going to allow my employer to help me go through maybe a work issue, maybe an extremely personal issue that usually you wouldn't talk about at work? Where's the balance in that?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important. So first of all, from a privacy perspective, we don't ever give personal information. So as an individual, when I log into Modern Health, an employer is not seeing my personal interactions or understanding individually what I'm doing, but they can see that across an entire population. So we do a lot of different assessments at the time of onboarding and throughout a journey with Modern Health. So after you see a provider or once a month or at different points, we can actually push assessments out, and we're actually measuring almost well-being of populations. And so while you can't see me as an individual, what my mental well health is, I can see across different pockets of my business. So for example, I can see my sales team in the US is currently trending in this direction. This is how their well-being has actually changed over time. How does that compare to my technology team or other parts of the world that I have teams based out of? And so I think understanding populations in aggregate, we don't disclose information when it gets below 10 people, but on aggregate, you can actually really provide really interesting insights and actually help them take action. And then on top of that, we build a professional services team that's actually clinicians that are actually helping take action and take those insights and actually do something with it for employers. So we can actually put together specific content. We can actually create structured, really content specifically for individual employers based on what they're seeing in their populations. And to your point, it's becoming a way that employers are actually thinking about managing their current populations. And we've done some research that we actually just published earlier this year around attrition rates, for example, to be able to show that the populations that engage with Modern Health are less likely to leave the company. And so that becomes a great, frankly, retention opportunity for them. And so you're seeing employers push the use of Modern Health to actually try to retain employees, as well as doing things like improving performance scores and just overall just success of that employee at the company as well.
I love that. Man, is it so important when it comes to mindset and mental health and being able to be a good performer and be fully engaged at work. So the more companies realize that and get behind it, it is how they're going to have longevity with their employees and um, make bigger impacts in the world, I think, than they even see at the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love it that I think as a society, we're talking more about that, whether it's at the workplace or if it's even athletics. You're seeing, folks in the Olympics, folks in professional sports talk about mental health, talk about mindfulness, talk about how important this is for them to perform at an optimal level. And that absolutely translates back to the workplace. And I just love as a society that conversations now has become really front and center for so many folks.
Very cool. Now I want to talk a little bit more about Gyre in the ecosystem of Modern Health. And as part of your career journey, not only have you had all these different experiences with healthcare, but you've gone from being revenue to operations. How did that journey come about, and where are you finding passion maybe in this new skill set you're developing?
Yeah, no, I think it's been a great transition. And I think throughout my career, I've taken on kind of more sales roles or operations roles. And, I think I started my career at Google back in 2003. So this was back in the early days of Google, and really built up my career in a sales role. And especially back then when digital advertising was not the way that brands invested, I always say like we really had to sell back then too, because there was a lot of just transformational changes in terms of how people think about digital advertising versus print or radio or TV or anything else as well. And so I feel like back then it was incredibly challenging in terms of the sales process. When I left Google, I went to Lyft and started the healthcare business. And I think that's when you and I met as well too. And
Mm-hmm.
to me, which was the work we were doing there, one was incredibly meaningful, where we were trying to help some of our lower income and elderly populations get better access to treatment through offering better transportation. And in that role was a combination of revenue and sales, an incredible amount of operations where we're actually staying up a new product. We're building the business from scratch. And feel like I got exposed a little bit more to the operations side there. And I will say the scale that Lyft operated to be able to, at the time, have millions of drivers all across the country offering transportation in a matter of minutes. Like I was just in awe in terms of like the infrastructure that actually had to be built to make that possible. And so for me, like coming to a role like Modern Health, my role is very cross-functional. So I lead all of our go-to-market teams, our clinical teams. I also run our legal team. But then on top of that, I also run all of our operations teams. So around all of our provider recruitment. And to make that possible to be matched to providers in 24 hours across the globe. We operate today in over 55 different countries. And our 24-hour time to care is global. So no matter where you are, we can match you a provider in the language you speak within less than 24 hours. And that type of infrastructure and scale is just incredibly complex, and it's challenging. And so to me, like in a role like I'm in now and making that transition from sales to operations, in some ways, like you're stepping back a little bit in terms of being on the front line. You're not the one, I describe as you're almost like an air traffic controller. So you're not the one necessarily flying every single plane out there, but you're hopefully helping orchestrate all these different pieces of it and making sure everyone continues to move forward. And I kind of love that view where you're trying to have a broader impact. And I love having a broader charter, but I also frankly love to like get in the weeds and get in the plane at times and help people fly, but then be able to step back again too and kind of set them on their way. And to me, that plays well into what I feel like that, I enjoy doing is, I love being a coach. I love being a mentor to people on my team across the business. And this operations role allows you to, in some ways, get in the weeds, help them be successful, but then also set them in a different direction and move on. And having that broad charter, some ways is a challenge at times, but it's incredibly enjoyable and just inspiring to feel like you're helping lead such a big part of the team.
That's amazing. I'm sure you get that much more respect from them and can empathize too with the fact that you've flown the plane before. And so now you're going to make that part of the job that much easier for them by going and doing the part that takes a little more focus and a little more detail orientation.
Yeah, and I think so. And I think that's, to me, just personally something that when I joined Lyft, I left a fairly large team at Google and went to Lyft, and I had a team of one when I first started. And it was really going back to being an IC again. And, I had a partner that helped build the business together, but it was, time to roll up your sleeves and kind of get back down the trenches and do the work together. And to me, that's something that no matter what role you're in or what organization or team or level you're a part of, like that's something just personally I always try to do as well. And I think you can build credibility, and you also just understand the needs of the business in a way that you can if you're not willing to do that.
That's good. Now you're big on culture too. Granted, the companies you all been in, including now Modern Health, have an incredible culture, but I think a lot of that stems from your leadership and your intentionality about that. Do you have a philosophy and maybe something you do day over day or week over week to ensure that you're building an amazing culture in a place that people want to work?
Yeah, I grew up at Google, and obviously in the early days of Google, I was part of Sheryl Sandberg's organization, and
Cool.
her whole, I think, leadership style and the way that she built a leadership team around her was really based on this foundation of what a woman named Kim Scott wrote a whole book around, was this a concept of radical candor, where the whole concept of radical candor means you have to build incredibly important, meaningful relationships with people and work your way up that spectrum of care. But you also, once you have those relationships, you got to be willing to, in Kim Scott's word, like piss people off, is the way she described it. And in some ways that means like be brutally honest with people in the times that maybe are hard to do. And it's hard to do as an individual to give someone that feedback. It's also hard to do as sometimes the person receiving that feedback. And so to me, that's kind of the philosophy I use when I think about building culture is let's build incredibly important, strong relationships with each other. Let's also make sure that because of those relationships, we're willing to be incredibly direct and honest, and Kim's word, radically candid with each other to give people the feedback they need. And so to me, that's what builds great teams and great cultures, is having strong relationships, but then also being willing to challenge people and give people that feedback. And that's something, frankly, on a daily basis. I do actually just did a training for my team here at Modern Health across the company around radical candor, and just said, this is how I approach not only my work relationships, my personal relationships, or any relationships you have in your life, is just being willing to challenge people, but also get to know people at a personal level and make sure they realize and you can show them that you really care about them.
Yeah, there's a balance between overstepping and upsetting people by being too open without having that rapport. But if you lay that foundation, then everybody benefits and everybody appreciates candor more than anything, because it helps everyone get better and it builds tighter relationships, like gaslighting and these things that happen in certain situations because people won't lay this foundation of trust in a relationship, do more damage for mental health than if you are there to be, hey, we're a team, we're going to help each other and we're going to invest in each other. And even though it's painful, like it's done in caring and a foundation of like, I really value this friendship, relationship, whatever it is.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think sometimes some of the best relationships are built on those moments where you have to tell someone, incredibly challenging or difficult feedback, and sometimes painful in the moment, but after the fact, I think it makes hopefully both of you better, and it strengthens the relationship you have with people. And to me, that's something I just, in any work environment, I think it's sometimes hard to do, because I think as a society and as you enter the workforce, you're almost told to be professional and create those barriers and those times those blockers of that. And so to be willing to be vulnerable, be willing to actually open yourself up and kind of bring your whole self to work, I think is sometimes a challenge for people as well. And so when I joined Modern Health and I took on a management of these folks, one-on-one relationships, it was all about building a relationship, understand who they were, understanding what motivates them, and then being pretty transparent about myself, my personal life, my challenges, my goals as well, and just trying to build a relationship through transparency, I think was really important.
Yeah. One of the things I admire about you, running around, you've got 4 kids, building your own little farm out there in California. Tell us about how you like to spend your time outside of work to make sure you have this well-rounded, balanced life.
Yeah, well, thank you for asking that too. So yes, I live in California in the Bay Area. I live on about 2 acres here on the kind of outskirts of the Bay Area. I have 4 kids all under the age of 14 right now too, so they definitely keep me busy. And then on top of that, we have a whole farm we've built over the past 2 years as well too. So we've got goats and sheep and pigs. I just bought my wife 2 alpacas for Christmas.
Yes.
We grow most of our own food. We harvest honey. And I love that all my kids have become these little entrepreneurs. So they start a little weekend farm stand in front of our house where they sell chicken eggs and honey and produce, and signing up people for a delivery business for CSA boxes. So I'd say the time I spend with my family is probably number one, and making sure that I carve out time for my kids, and my farm as well. I guess additionally to that too, I love to run Ironman races. So that was something I got it back in 2018. And so that's become a passion of mine as well too. And something that, I'm up every day at 5:30, running around, riding my bike, swimming, or getting out there as well. And that's personally something that just keeps me centered. And it's kind of the time within the day that's kind of personally for myself. And so I enjoy the training, I enjoy the races, and something I definitely love doing.
Very cool. How many have you completed now?
So I have a goal. So I've done 4 fulls and 4 halves right now.
Okay.
I have a goal to get to 10. Once you get to 10, you can qualify for Kona, which is the race that started it all. So I have 3 fulls I'm signed up for this year, which everyone says is too many. So we'll see how that goes. But I enjoy the journey, and I enjoy the challenge. And, for me, when I got into this was back in 2018, I signed up and I had a goal to run an Ironman, and I had never been on a road bike. I had never swam more than a few laps, and I don't think I'd ever run more than maybe 5 miles. And I said, sounds like a good goal to sign up for a big race that I don't think I can do today. And so on one day I signed up for an Ironman, a half Ironman, an Olympic, and a sprint, and kind of all the steps around the journey there. And from literally the day I signed up to a year, I went through it and did all those races and survived and finished my first Ironman. And after that, literally crossing the finish line, I was so hooked. I came home that night and signed up for some more races, because I said, this is the best time. The feeling when you cross the race after 15, 16 hours of running, biking, swimming is you feel incredibly excited. You feel motivated, and you feel like you can do anything. So those are all the times I come home and sign up for more races, because that keeps me going.
When the adrenaline's high, yes.
Yeah.
Go do it then. And then you go, oh, wait, I can make it happen. No, I'll never forget. It was HIMSS one year. There was a step challenge, and it was like totally your normal to put, I don't know, at least 6-7 miles on every morning. And it's just every day, the leaderboard, you came that much more ahead of everybody, to a point where like the gap was so big by the end, it was just, nobody could even do that in one day. And it was just your normal, like, I get up and run. It's so cool. And I think it's got to do wonders for your mental health.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we were in Vegas that year, I think, too. And the run up and down the strip at 5 a.m. is an interesting time. There's a lot of different people out at that hour as well, too. So it was, I think over the week, I did almost over 100 miles, I think, over the week at the end there as well. But it was a great challenge. And ended up raising some money for charity as well, too, which was a good outcome.
Very cool. What would you say, like, from a mental health perspective, doing all this has impacted you? Like, is it stamina? Is it problem solving? Like, what are the biggest, outside of, I know everybody talks about the runner high, what are the biggest benefits that you've noticed from a mental perspective of just getting out there and putting on miles after miles every morning?
Yeah, I mean, I will say, I mean, throughout our lives, like everyone, like especially in this world, like we live busy lives, right? Where we have families, we have full-time jobs. We're on Zoom now almost all hours of the day. And so for me personally, I mean, I wake up every day at 5:30. Even on the weekends, I wake up at 5:30. It just becomes my routine of I get up, and I will say, like, there's incredible calm within the chaos of that time when you're running by yourself at 5:30 and nobody's really awake yet and the sun's just coming up. Like, it's incredibly peaceful and kind of way to center yourself for the day. And it's a time where I do a lot of just thinking. You retrospectively look back at what you've accomplished in personal life and professional life and start to think through around what do you want to do next. And so to me, it's just like it's a time where there's less distractions, and I try to not listen to music and not necessarily even listen to podcasts, but really just keep it quiet, where it allows you just kind of this internal thinking. And without a doubt, like, there's always stressful moments, and to me it's something I actually look forward to, because I love that silence. And that was hard to do at first. Most of the time people run, they listen to music, they listen to podcasts or books, and in some ways that's great, it's a distraction, but it kind of doesn't cause you to almost think and kind of think internally and kind of take the time to kind of take care of yourself that way. And so I love those moments, and it's something I look forward to. And it took me a while to get used to waking up at 5:30. Now it's actually something that I wake up with an alarm clock, but I will say I was never a morning person, so I trained myself to do that and got used to it. And now it's something I really look forward to.
That's very cool. I've noticed too, like, just sitting and meditating is really hard. Like,
Yeah.
stillness and being still is extremely hard. But stillness with physical engagement, I can make happen. And I've been surprised that, like, Spartan, for example, that's my workout of choice. They don't even allow you to have headphones on course because it could be dangerous, but also I think they want you to be a part of the full experience. And I love that. Like, my mind feels the most clear. If I go into it like with a problem I want to solve, I have some answers around that by the end of the race. And it's that much easier to have a form of meditation because my whole body's engaged.
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I got into Spartan races too. I enjoy those as well
Yes.
too. I feel like they beat your body up a little bit more than Ironman races do, but those are another challenging thing that I definitely love doing too. And yeah, it's awesome to keep doing those.
Yeah. We'll run one together one day
Love that. That'd be great.
out in Cali. Okay. I want to shift gears now to one final question for you, and it's around principles. I want to hear throughout your wonderful healthcare adventure, what has been one core principle that you've really clung to that's helped you be successful in business?
Yeah, I think number one for me I'd say is relationships. I really invest a lot in the people that I've worked with and worked with me, for me, I've worked for as well. And throughout my career, whether it was joining Google back at that stage or going to Lyft or ultimately coming here to Modern Health, there's not a single job that I ever got that was not about a relationship I had with someone. Either it was a personal relationship, a professional relationship. Anytime that you go to interview for a job, people take your references, they back channel and ask people around you. And I always try to invest a lot in just people first. Like, I really value the relationships I have. I really try to, if I'm working for someone, try to invest a lot in, like, what can I learn from them? Like, what advice can I take from them leading those conversations? How do I ask for feedback pretty regularly from everyone around me? So the number one, I'd say, is just relationships with people. And I think it's something that people don't prioritize enough. They don't prioritize maintain those relationships. I mean, it's hard. I mean, there's personal relationships, there's professional relationships, and you've got to invest a lot into all those in order to actually cultivate and manage those. I have mentors today that I worked with at Google or worked at Lyft, and they're people I call and I ask for advice. And I will say every single week I'm having a one-on-one with someone that used to work for me as well, and I'm trying to be a mentor and hopefully giving them some words of wisdom that I can help them with as well. And so I invest a lot into the people that have worked on my team and for me, because I want to ultimately give back and support them. And then I also invest a lot of the relationships of people that I worked with in those early days at Google's. I mean, there's incredible caliber of people have gone off to do these amazing jobs and be COs and COs and leaders across these organizations. And those are people that I personally can rely on, and I can ask for advice and help and guidance over those times. And so I'd say my principle is invest in relationships and make sure that you're prioritizing that as part of your life as well.
It's good. And I'm sure you have a interesting perspective on it, especially because of the industry you're serving today. In I think the definition of relationships and relationship management has changed because we've gone so digital. And there's got to be a balance between, just sending each other memes on Instagram
Yeah.
versus like developing a true trusted advisor relationship. And you hit on it a little bit earlier, like before you can really have radical candor, there's got to be a foundation. You've got to make sure it's a really solid foundation. And it doesn't have to be in person, but it also can't be two service levels. It's got to be a just way that you're willing to share what you care about and your passions and what you do outside of work to really make it feel like legitimate and
Yeah.
like a solid foundation so that you can take that next step and actually being able to build something together and have a bigger impact in the world through that relationship versus it being too surface level, which sometimes can be comfortable, especially because technology enables it today, but allowing it to go another step. And I'm sure enabling your therapist to do that is something that can really make a bigger impact.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And I think it goes back to just even how you present yourself and manage those personal relationships is kind of how vulnerable are you willing to be and how much can you open up. And, when I have a team I take on, like I said before, I share a lot about me and share a lot about who I am and my life and what's important to me. And I ask questions about my team the same way as well. Like, what's their motivation? What are their ultimate? I always talk about having career conversations with your team and where do they want to go? In some ways, I know everyone on my team is going to work for me at Modern Health and work a part of this team forever. And so I want to help them be successful. And I also want to understand just what motivates them and inspires them and keeps them going every day. And so to me, that's what's also exciting about relationships is like, how can you invest in the people themselves? And really, how do you build those personal connections? And to me, it's about being transparent, it's being open and being willing to listen. I think a lot of people are not great listeners as well, too. And just to stop a little bit and pause and take the moment to like really hear what people are having to say and respond with the intent of listening, not respond with the intent of, or listening with intent to respond, I think is a really important measurement.
It's good. I like it. Gyre, you're awesome. Such an inspiration. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for all the kind words as well, too.
Mm-hmm. Yes, everyone check out Modern Health. Amazing company. Keep tabs on Gyre. They're doing big things. And we're excited to see the next challenge that you decide to tackle.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.